Good evening, Dr. Jane Goodall.
Well, good evening to you. Is it evening for you? Where are you?
We're in Switzerland, yes, so it is indeed
Oh,
evening.
you're in Switzerland. Hmm,
Yeah, and you're
that's
you're still in your childhood home.
I'm in my childhood home. Books behind me are books I had as a child. And there's so much connection. It's the longest I've been home since I was grounded at the beginning of the pandemic,
Yes,
since I left school. It's the
and
longest I've been here. Yeah.
and there's something delightful about that, isn't there?
Well, I look out there and there's the trees that I climbed as a child, and the one beech tree that I used to spend hours and hours up there and do my homework up there. I read Tarzan up there. And so that's really where my passion to go to Africa began.
Yes.
Yeah.
And part of the reason, or the reason we have the opportunity to speak tonight, which is such a blessing for me, is because of your work that started in Africa. You are the recipient of the 2021 Templeton Prize because of your extraordinary and transformative work with the chimpanzees. And so I would like first to start by raising a glass to congratulate you
And
on,
I will raise a glass too.
yes, please. And anyone who's watching, feel free to raise a glass.
Yes, we can clink like
Yes,
this.
indeed. And
Clink.
not only are you the recipient of this very distinguished prize, and it is well deserved. You are one of the most transformative people of our time. You're only the fourth woman to receive this prize, which I think is exceptional. So, here's to you. Congratulations.
And cheers to what I'm going to be able to do, because it's a very generous prize.
It is indeed, and I just wanted to help orientate our listeners. Quote something that was provided about the reason why the Templeton Foundation chose you as the recipient. Your achievements go beyond the traditional parameters of scientific research to define our perception of what it means to be human. Your discoveries have profoundly altered the world's view of animal intelligence and enriched our understanding of humanity in a way that is both humbling and exalting. Ultimately, your work exemplifies the kind of humility, and I love this part, of course, spiritual curiosity and discovery that John Templeton wrote and spoke about during his life. So that's a little bit of why we're here. And before we go any further, we didn't actually have the opportunity to talk about this, but would you care to introduce yourself in your customary fashion?
Well, you'd like me to give a chimpanzee greeting. Would you like a chimpanzee greeting?
Now, I personally would feel mightily indulged.
All right. And then you can return with the bonobo greeting. Ha ha ha.
It's very poor, but I can try.
Okay, so here's the chimp. And that simply means this is me, this is Jane, because I'm sure the bonobos too, they all have their own individual voices.
Yes. And mine is so embarrassing that what I will do.
Oh, cheat.
Cheat!
Well, they make such strange squeaky sounds compared to the chimps. But,
Yes.
you say all these things about me, but it's entirely due to the amazing people I've been able to surround myself with, starting off with my extraordinary mother. She's over here behind me always. And, so my grandfather, and sadly, I never met him. He died before I was born, but he was my mother's father. And he was a congregational minister. So we we went to church. We weren't particularly religious, but we went on the right days. And what was so wise about my mother is that she said to me when we were talking about these things, she said, you're growing up in a Christian family. Your grandfather was a minister. And so we worship God. But you might have been born in Egypt. And then you'd grow up as a Muslim and you'd worship Allah. And she went round the different religions. And, we discussed all these things and how every single major religion follows the golden rule, the same one: do to others as you would have them do to you. And so, as I said, here in this house where I grew up, the rest of the family, amazing. My grandmother, my mother's two sisters, my uncle who was a surgeon. And I've still got, this was given to me when I was 8 years old, and by my aunt, mum's sister, Olwen. They all had Welsh names. And this little Bible, which I've had all these years, I can hardly read it now. I need a magnifying glass, but isn't that wonderful? Do you have any books from your childhood?
So I had a very peripatetic childhood, 13 schools in 12 years. I have my diary, but I don't have any particular books. But I do have favorite scripture from when I was growing up. And I know that you have a favorite piece of scripture. And,
Yes.
part of the Templeton Prize and the mission of the Templeton Foundation is obviously about science, but also that spiritual curiosity. And I think, if I can be so bold, that's part of the experience that you and I have shared in the forest, you with the chimpanzees and me with the bonobos, that there's obviously the science and the observation, but then there's that ineffable, beautiful sense of connection with these intelligent, sentient beings. And I thought it might be fun to just share a little bit about, you had your beloved graybeard, and then I've got my connections with the bonobos who are particularly special to me. Just maybe describe a little bit in your own words what that moment is like for you. I told you in the letter I wrote you that when I arrive at the bonobos where they've nested the night before and I'm waiting for them to wake up, I cry. I just weep out of joy and gratitude and the majesty and the mysticism of it. And so I thought it would be wonderful to hear from you a little bit about some of those moments that you've experienced.
Yes, well, I've definitely always felt the greatest connection with a spiritual power when I'm out in the rainforest, either on my own or with the chimpanzees. But sometimes, what I've discovered, and I don't know if you felt this, I can be out in the forest with a great friend, or, like my husband, who was the photographer and filmmaker. And always when you're with somebody, you're a human being in nature. But if you're alone, self vanishes and you're part of nature. That's what I love most. And learning how everything in the rainforest is interconnected. Every little species has a role to play. And it's really sacrilegious what we're doing to the planet today, isn't it?
It's difficult to witness,
It's terrible.
difficult to witness. And I understand you have a new book on hope coming out, which will be, I'm sure, exciting and important. And so it sort of begs the question, in these times that seem so calamitous, from whence does your hope come? And how do you sustain it?
Well, we are going through very, very dark times. And I think this COVID pandemic, I think it's woken up a lot of people, and people are beginning to understand that, the idea of having unlimited economic development on a planet with finite natural resources is crazy. It's ridiculous. And particularly when there's a growing population of humans and of livestock.
Yes.
And so it's really important that we start to think of a new relationship with the natural world. It was our disrespect of nature that's caused climate change and loss of biodiversity, our disrespect of nature and particularly animals that led to this pandemic. And so it's so important that we get a new mindset and we start thinking, what should we be thinking of as a successful life? And right now, if you ask most people, they'll say, oh, you get money. And if you're really successful, you get more money and you get power. And that's what's wrong. Don't you think it should be enough money to live in a way that you can support your family and have some leisure time, enjoy your family, enjoy being out in nature, smelling the roses, as they say? We need, and it hits home to me because when I'm in Africa or one of these other places where there's so many people in poverty, but providing they have a reasonable job and enough money to buy food each day, and many of them are sort of aspiring to do a little bit better, but they're happy. I mean, they're really happy. They laugh in the evening, and you go around these more or less almost like slums, but there's little braziers burning and people sitting around them, and some of them are singing, there's music playing. You think you don't get that in our consumer world today. We're losing something, aren't we?
Yes. And this sort of brings together the components of your work where you have helped bring the revolution of understanding that animal welfare is integral to human welfare, that the ecosystem on which we all depend is essential, and that the folks who live in and near the forest habitat must also thrive, and that this is a one health system. And you've done this in such a comprehensive way. That's part of what's made you such an extraordinary pioneer. And it all started, with this brave, indefatigable young woman walking in the forest, connecting with chimpanzees, and looking them in the eye, and I love, and I remember some of my first moments, a baby riding on a mama's back and just turning around and the hand brushing against the leaves and making the sustained eye contact with this mutual curiosity as we both walked through the glory of the rainforest. And so it starts with connection, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And bless you for your ability to be connected. I think that is just something, and it started with your connection with that little hen. And that kind of, in this very roundabout way, brings me to something that you said that I hope can be this inspiration for people, because there is failure in our work. And we do need resilience. When you talk about the hen and you were curious where the egg came from and you were 4 years old and went out there and watched it, that you made a mistake and then you had to reevaluate. So in having made mistakes over the course of your career, where has the resilience come from? Because with Roots and Shoots and all the young people out there, we do have our mistakes and we do have to get back up and keep going. And you're obviously an extraordinarily resilient person. So where has some of that resilience come from?
Not just mistakes, is it? It's also actual people who really want to tell you that you've done everything wrong, like I was told when I went to Cambridge. But where do I get the resilience? I suppose because I'm a very obstinate person. I'm not going to let people knock me down. I'm like those little, I don't know what you call them, you knock it over and it bounces back up. I feel that I'm like that. But I go back all the time to my mother. She really, really gave me this really good start in life. And my grandmother was the same. And then I've surrounded with the Jane Goodall Institute world with amazing, passionate people. And I've been so lucky traveling around the world as I did until COVID, about 300 days a year all over. And I was meeting incredible people and learning about extraordinary projects, so that an area that we've totally destroyed can once again support nature, given time and maybe some help. And the tiny Gombe National Park, where the research is still going on, that when I went first to Africa in 1960, first to Gombe, it was part of this equatorial forest belt that stretched almost unbroken across to the west coast. By the late 1980s, it was a tiny island of forest surrounded by completely bare hills, more people than the land could support, too poor to buy food from elsewhere, struggling to survive. And that's when it hit me. If we don't help these people find ways of living without cutting down the trees to get a bit more soil to grow a bit more food, or to make charcoal and get a bit of money just to keep going, if we can't help them find other ways of living, then we can't save chimpanzees, forests, or anything else. whether it's chimpanzees or elephants or bonobos or gorillas or whatever it is. We've got to have the local people with us. So right from the beginning, we picked a little team of 7 local Tanzanians who went into the villages around Gombe, not a group of arrogant white people, but these local people who are no threat, sitting down saying, what do you think JGI can do to make your lives better? And that's where we started. So all of these people, and now it's in 104 villages throughout Tanzania, they're our partners in conservation. They've learned how to use smartphones. They go and monitor the health of their forests where most of the chimps are not protected at all. And that program's in 6 other African countries, and in all of them, every village where we operate, the youth program Roots and Shoots is operational, because no points raising lots of money to work with people if you're not raising new generations to do a lot better than we've done. So, but question I have for you, when you went to the bonobos, did you have, what sort of degree did you have?
I had a degree in wandering in the Appalachian Mountains of Eastern Kentucky, and being a solo backcountry hiker in the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. My undergraduate degree was from the University of Kentucky in French and art history and anthropology, and then I did a master's at the Harvard School of the John F. Kennedy Harvard School. And that was it. You know, I had this deep curiosity. And when Richard Wrangham, who of course was a PhD student of yours,
yes,
labeled me a bonobo when I met him and said, you need to go to Kokolapori, I said, well, of course I'll do that. You know, I had done lots of work in brothels and slums and orphanages and hospices around the world with my feminist social justice humanitarian work. And it was just natural that I would go on this kind of adventure. And then I went, you know, it was extraordinary that I was welcomed. I mean, that was really the aperture. And it was all due to, of course, the founder of the Kokolapori Research Reserve welcoming me. And then, of course, my life totally changed because of the connection that we made. And I started to write. I'm working on a book. I've written, you know, maybe 13 or 14 chapters of the book so far about the bonobos and life in Congo. And, you know, our context is very different because it's totally remote and there's no development, there's no government presence, there's no NGO or, you know, UN presence. And we are building 5 schools for the 5 villages in whose ancestral forest the bonobos range. But even that is an extremely complex and difficult endeavor. And, you know, I would love to bring safe birth kits to the mothers because they give birth alone in their huts without even skilled birth attendant present. But of course, that has to be their idea and their initiative, and the management of it is a total mess. But we're doing the best that we can.
Yeah, well, I think, you know, people are beginning to understand that we need to work with the people and not in a colonial sort of top-down way, which is back in when we began our Take Care to Corrie program, it was 94. And at that time, most of the NGOs were very, you know, top-down, walking into a village, very arrogant. Well, you've messed up things here, haven't you? This is what we're going to do to put it right. No, 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 we didn't work that way. And you've got to get the people with you. Took quite a long time to get the people to trust us because they were used to people coming in, maybe collecting data for a PhD, going away. They got nothing back at all.
That's right.
You know?
Well, the villagers are building the schools themselves. I mean, they're fabricating the bricks right now.
Yes.
And I'll keep you posted as to how that goes.
Do, please do. And of course, when I began, I hadn't been to college at all. I wanted to be a naturalist and write books because when I was growing up, way long before you were even thought of, before your parents were married, you know, I was growing up during World War II, and girls didn't think of becoming that kind of scientist. And when I said age 10 that I wanted to go to Africa, live with wild animals and write books about them, it wasn't chimps especially, by the way. A lot of people think it was, but it wasn't. And everybody laughed at me. How will you do that? You know, you don't have any money, and you're just a girl. But not my wise mother, who said, if you really want to do something like this, you're going to have to work really hard, take advantage of every opportunity. And if you don't give up, you might find a way. And I wish Mum was alive to know how many people have come to me and said, or written, I want to thank you because you taught me, because you did it. I can do it too.
That's right. Yes, absolutely. And look at you now, the 2021 Templeton Prize recipient.
In my 88th year,
Yes.
still so much to do.
And you're one of the most interviewed and accessible people of our time. You know, you're on your website. If folks don't know it, you've got your mailbag. Folks can write in letters and you answer questions. And, you know, is there anything else that you would like to say? Is there anything that is unsaid?
There's nothing that's unsaid, but there's something worth repeating again and again and again, which is that every single individual matters. Every single individual has a role to play, even if they don't know it yet. And every single individual, each one of us, we make an impact on the planet every day. And some people look at the doom and gloom and give up. That's why I started Roots and Shoots, because if our young people lose hope, there's no future, is there? And I think when people look around at all the doom and gloom, it does feel hopeless. But as I said, I've been able to meet people and learn about projects around the world that give me great hope that we can do it. The young people, Roots and Shoots is now in around 60 countries and growing, with thousands of young people, and many of them now grown up and out in the big wide world. And, you know, when young people understand the problems and they're empowered to take action, it's incredible what they're doing. They're so passionate, so dedicated, so hardworking. And as we speak, they are changing the world.
You could be talking about yourself.
I'm talking about all the young people out there who are going to take over. What makes me really angry is when people say to young people, it's your responsibility to put things right. And I say, no, it's not their responsibility. It's our responsibility. We did it. And we should be helping them to find solutions to the problems that we created.
Yes. It's such a pleasure to be able to spend some time with you. Thank you so much for the opportunity and for being so gracious and acceptable and accessible. And thank you for suggesting I take a sweater to the rainforest. I wouldn't have known that there does get that little chill in the evenings. And I didn't know there would be fireflies. Can you imagine my delight? This Kentucky girl waking up and seeing the fireflies. It was just,
aren't they wonderful?
Oh, they're magical.
Yeah.
Well, God bless and keep you, Dr. Jane Goodall. Thank you so much. And congratulations on being the 2021 Templeton Prize recipient.
Well, thank you. And cheers again.
Yes. Cheers.
Yeah. Cheers.
To the chimps.
You see my glass. It's very special. Can you see it?
Of course.
Yeah, it was a gift that came to me about a month ago from somebody who liked the interview I did and sent me this. There's two of them. Yes, so cheers. With a little chimp glass. Cheers. And good luck to you.
Thank you so much.
Stay in touch.
Yes, I shall. Thank you for that.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.